Coughing,
There. If you need water, please help
coughing
yourself.
through the whole interview.
Okay, let's see. I need to get my mic hooked up here.
Yeah, it is be convenient.
So basically, you'll film it all, and then later you'll edit it and edit stuff out. Okay.
Yeah, and
So
so from the WSU end, we're gonna at some point put essentially the interview up for
hmm
people. And we're also going to be sort of making clips, so people talk about a similar topic.
hmm
Put them all together. Someone wants to look up
Yeah.
the B reactor or something.
Yeah.
Then anyone who talks about the B reactor, there'd be all these different clips.
Oh, okay.
So make it sort of research friendly.
Okay.
Part of the idea. Yeah. All right. We all set?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead and get started. And so, if I could start first by just having you say your name and then spell your name for us.
My name's Danny Henry. Spelling is Danny. Middle initial is R, or Ray, Ray. Henry, Henry.
All right. Thank you. And my name's Robert Bauman, and we're conducting this interview on the campus of Washington State University Tri-Cities on July 2nd of 2014. So let's start maybe by talking about how and when your family first came to the Tri-Cities, and when that was and why they came.
Okay, actually, my father first of all came to the Tri-Cities, and he came to the Tri-Cities. I believe it was somewhere around 48. It was in the mid or late 40s, and he actually came out from the South, from Arkansas, Atkins, Arkansas, Polk County. And he was married to my mom at that time, but she stayed back in the South, and he came out to work for the government during the war effort. And he worked out here for some period of time. I don't know how long, but he liked it out here. And so once his mission was done, he went back to the South, and then later years came back out and found work with the railroad, and then eventually started working construction. And he became a laborer and worked construction. And then he came back out to the site and worked at N-Reactor for some period of time. And I can even remember back in the 60s when John Fitzgerald Kennedy came out here as the president to give a speech about the N-Reactor. I was a kid. I think I was probably about 7 or 8 years old, maybe 10, somewhere around there. And then he decided to stay out here when he came back out to the Northwest, back out to Washington, decided to stay out here and got work, and then sent for my mom, and she came out, and so they made a life and stayed on. So.
Do you know how he originally heard about Hanford? It's a long way from Arkansas.
My understanding from my older brother, which is 20 years older than me, he said that he had actually received direction from the government or allowance from the government, and received gas credit or chips or whatever in order to drive out and to show up at the Hanford site at some designated time. And so him and another one of his friends both drove out, and they went to work out here during the 40s.
So he was recruited in some way or something?
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Okay. So then you were born in the Tri-Cities?
Yes, I was born in Pasco, Washington, 1953, May 7th, 1953, and graduated Pasco High School, went on to college and graduated from Evergreen State College, and then returned back here to the Tri-Cities and found employment out at Hanford. First of all, it was with Rockwell and with the fire department. I'll back up a little bit. During the summer of when I was in high school, 2 summers, I did work out for J.A. Jones at that time in the 300 area, and actually worked as a printer, or learned as a summer job, and learned how to print on these old offset printers, and did that for 2 summers. And so when actually I graduated from college and came back, while I was at college, I did receive a emergency medical technician certificate through the state of Washington, and so it was a good shoe-in to go to work for the fire department as a firefighter. So let's see, it was Chief Good at that time who hired me in. At that time, there was only a few that had EMT certifications, and Chief Good had told me that there was no intention at that time to actually have the fire department respond for emergency care. They would always call the Richland Fire Department or Cadillac or some other emergency services. And so I didn't really see a whole bunch of future in staying there at the fire department. So I heard that they were hiring down at InReactor for reactor operators, and the pay was a bit better. So I thought that would be a challenge, and so I applied.
And so you got a job there then?
Yeah, I started working. I started working at InReactor. I believe it was 79, or it was late 1978, and went into the reactor operator program, and eventually, started in the fuels department, and then had the opportunity to get into the certification program for the control room, and decided I would take on the challenge. There was a lot of talk back and forth with the other operators. Some was pro and some was con. No, it's not really better to work in the control room. It's better to work in fuels. But I seen the challenge of being able to actually operate a reactor, and I really wanted that certification. And so I did go in the certification program, and after I think 2.5 years, I think the class started out, I think it was like 24, 26, and the final certified reactor operators, I think there was 6 of us. I could probably name them. Yeah, and all the other operators dropped out, and they went back to fuels, or they got into the trades, or just left the company. But I stayed on and was certified. It was very, very challenging, very hard.
Right. And so how long was that training program?
The training program, I think it was about 1.5 years, 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, with all of the qualifications you had to be trained on all the different systems. You had to get checked out by the senior operators, and they would ask you questions and make sure you're proficient in every one of those before you got to sign off. So you had to complete all of that, as well as take tests, periodic tests on the systems. And when you had finished all of your actual qualifications, then you were allowed to take the 8-hour exam.
Oh, okay.
And so once I had finished up mine, there was testing, and I took the 8-hour exam and passed the 8-hour exam. I think I probably took about 10 hours to finish it, but that was fine, and passed the exam. And from there, you're then allowed to do a walkthrough where a senior trainer would take you out into the facility and basically ask you anything he wanted to, all the way from the front face to the rear face, to the confinement valves, to the emergency cooling system, and in anything, and components or valves and circuitry and all of that. And I passed that. I did quite well. I spent a lot of time, actually, when I was an operator, The duties primarily was laundry, because there was a lot of SWPs or radioactive clothing that was used. So someone always had to maintain laundry, and then also some of the duties was housekeeping. Some of the duties was actually patrol, where actually you went through the reactor and made sure all of the outside systems and everything was in correct alignment and there was any out of spec conditions. So I spent a lot of time out in the reactor. At the time when I was out, I took it upon myself to take prints with me and actually verify and look at a lot of the systems out there, so I knew them pretty well. So that was one of the things that really worked for me when I did my walkthrough. I was really ready for that, and I think I scored highest in my walkthrough of the 3 tests. The final test was the oral exam, and the oral exam consisted of a senior person from training, senior person from operations, senior person from nuclear safety, and they all sat on your board. And I think there was one other individual also. I think may have been quality assurance, maybe. And basically, they sit in a room like this, and you sit in front of a table, and they ask you questions, and you answer the questions, and they have the choice of asking you whatever questions they chose to, as long as it related to reactor operations, up to and including the electrical distribution systems that powered or brought power to the reactor, as well as the power going out, steam systems, all of the different auxiliary systems of part of the plant. Anyway, I passed that exam also, the oral board, and so then I was granted my certification.
Big grueling process.
It was, very much.
And so how long were you an operator then? How long did you work?
Actually, as a certified operator, I maintained my certification, I believe, for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. There was a requalification. I think it was about a year and a half. I did operate the reactor, the nuclear console, the AA console, that probably doesn't mean anything to you, but the water systems, or the actual nuclear panel where you actually pulled and maintained power and adjusted power, and also a lot of the air balance systems and the secondary systems where the steam was produced and sent over to Washington State Public Power. We sold steam. It was a dual-purpose reactor, and worked on all of the panels.
And so before you were an operator, you worked in fuels, you said. So what sort of work did that entail?
The fuels operation, excuse me, was actually the fuel that would be the spent fuel that was discharged out of the rear of the reactor would come out, go what was called a trampoline, and go into the water and hit this metal mesh chain type of trampoline to slow it down. These fuel elements were, I think, as I remember, somewhere around 50, 60 pounds. So coming out of the back of the reactor, they were pretty heavy. And so then they would roll down into conveyor carts, and that's one of the duties as a fuel operator, doing charge discharge. You'd basically take the fuel after it went through the cart, move it out, index it, take it out, and then place it in various different storage compartments in the back face of the reactor, or actually in the basin, what was called the fuels basin. And then also, that was the primary job of the fuels operator. Yeah.
And so how long total did you work at Hanford then?
Total time at Hanford is 35 years. I've been out here 35 years. It's been a long haul.
Yeah.
So.
And so you started in late 60s?
78 or 79, I believe. My actual date is start date was 8/1, yeah, 1978.
So you're there for a little while, and at some point, the mission shifts to cleanup.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did that impact the sorts of things you were doing?
Well, one of the things about being and as an operator is that you work shift work. Okay. And so I actually worked shift work, I think, for like 3 years, rotating shift, ABCD, graveyard swings, days. So that I never got used to that. I had a family, just starting a family and stuff, and I wanted to be able to spend a lot more time with my kids, my wife on normal hours. So I looked for another job at InReactor, and there was a opening for actually a process standard engineer / nuclear safety engineer, and so I applied for it. I got the job and was responsible for maintaining standards, process standards, which is day-to-day operations. If there was any changes or deviations to the operations, there had to be approval. There was approval process, and so I was kind of responsible for maintaining that, reviewing it, and then approving it through the control room and through my management in order to make any changes to reactor operations. Pretty much that was that job. It was straight days. I liked that.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 days. I was off the weekends. It was great. And there were some other opportunities also during that time in that position. But I wanted to mention I had a very good mentor. His name was John Long, and he was the nuclear safety engineer, or nuclear safety manager of nuclear safety at that time. And John was very instrumental in assisting and helping me. And I really do appreciate his efforts. He's deceased now. But anyway, John helped me quite a bit when I was in that position. There was other opportunities also. I moved from there and actually went into the planning aspects of outages. And so, the reactor would run for so long. Sometimes it was a planned outage, sometimes an unplanned outage. Unplanned outages usually were because the reactor scrammed for some reason. Maintenance had to be done. Something had to be fixed or repaired. So for the actual planned outages, I became a planner scheduler, or took a position as a planner scheduler, and actually planned to do various different maintenance. What that consisted of was drawing out a long-term plan, and when the reactor was down, is to manage that plan and for the systems to be fixed, repaired, coordinated for the least amount of time, so the reactor could actually come back up and running. We were being paid, so. And it was one thing I wanted to mention about InReactor. There was a lot of good spirit. The people who worked out there, they really knew that they were on a mission. This was during the Cold War, and we knew what we were doing, and it was just a lot of good spirit. When you'd ride the bus out. By the way, I rode the bus back and forth. Okay, and when you'd be on the bus and the reactor was down and you'd get past the fire department and you'd make that last left turn, people would just kind of wake up and they'd be looking, and they would, looking to see if that green light was on. There was, on the board, there was a green or red light. And, someone up front would say, yeah, we're up, and it was just a lot of that kind of spirit of wanting the reactor to run. I really like that. So being a part of the, doing the planning and scheduling, or a position as a planner scheduler, was a real shoe-in to going to work as an outage manager. I then became an outage manager, where actually I managed the outage center. And the outage center basically coordinated on a daily basis or on a shift basis. There was 6 of us, and I guess you could say we were kind of elite. We were very picked, to run that because it was so critical to the mission. And your responsibilities was to make sure that, things got done as scheduled, as planned, and that you had the craft resources to do them. You coordinated with the operations folks, the fuel folks, the engineering. That was your job, to coordinate all those efforts. A lot of the things that happened in the plant and the repairs actually required that you have engineers in place in case there was questions, technical questions, changes to paperwork that had to be authorized, and so on and so forth. So that was part of the job as an outage, the primary job as an outage manager, is to make sure of that. And you report it directly to upper management and at sometimes DOE. So you're responsible on a daily basis to coordinate and have those meetings and ensure that work got done and status at the end of the day. So shortly after that, they announced that, or probably I guess maybe about 6-8 months in that position, they announced that N-Reactor would be, after Chernobyl, they announced that N-Reactor would no longer be on the same mission, and it was going to shut down. So I moved from there to another job. I actually left N-Reactor and went to 200 area and worked as a nuclear safety engineer over for trying to think right now. I can remember who I worked for. I worked for Arlen Shade, but actually my responsibilities was over B Plant Wesseff. And at that time, they had just started to bring back the capsules that was basically sent down to, I forget exactly, Decatur, I think. Yeah. And anyway, these capsules, there was some problems with them, but anyway, they were bringing them back, and so I was right as part of that. And I don't know what happened to that mission, but I served there as a nuclear safety engineer with oversight responsibilities over B Plant Wesseff for a period of time. And then after that, let's see. I almost have to look at my resume to think. It's actually been that long. Of course, you're going to be cutting and doing clips and stuff, so I can just, okay. Oh, by the way, I actually pulled this out. This was actually my certification. Wally Ruff's name over there to the right there kind of faded. It must have got wet. Yeah, but that's the original certification. What's that?
The control room on the.
Yeah. So I didn't know exactly what you guys would want, but I just grabbed some stuff. This was my 30-year recognition with Fluor.
Right.
I don't have a 35. I don't know. They didn't give out a 35-year recognition. I don't know why. Let's see. Where am I? Process standards, senior outage planner, outage manager, nuclear safety principal engineer. Yeah, then after that, there was actually when I was as the nuclear safety principal engineer, oversight over B Plant Wesseff, there was a position that came available for a manager for OSHA compliance, OSHA safety and health program. We had previously been benefited, let me say, with headquarters coming out, and they were called the Tagger team. And they basically came out to the site and they went through the whole site and they were doing assessments and they assessed. They had a very, very large group and they assessed the site and with the effort to give feedback to the improvements that need to be done at Hanford. Well, part of the actions or corrective actions was to develop an OSHA type of assessment program that would look at occupational safety and health, industrial hygiene, and in some aspects, I think fire protection. Anyway, there was a position open, and I did not have the background in occupational safety and health, but I talked to my manager and finally I convinced him to put me in as in a temporary position, just as an acting manager. And so he went ahead and authorized that. So I then moved from the outer areas down to 300 area. And from there, he basically said, okay, Danny, you want this position? You think you can do it? He says, okay, here's a stack of resumes. You have 2 staff, and that's it, and a student worker. Okay, so you need to first of all hire and find some people that are qualified to be inspectors and in occupational safety and health and in hygiene. And then you need to have all this done, by the way, and a program developed in 4 months. Okay, and so that was quite a challenge. It was really a challenge. So I did hire, went outside and hired some people, and they were good people. We were a very good team. I didn't know about occupational safety and health, but they taught me. I knew I could hire people that were smarter than me, okay? And I actually hired, and maybe for a reference, one of the people is Judy Larson. I don't know if she still is living, but she was a certified industrial hygienist. She was working for PNNL, and she transferred over. Also hired a student that, well, no, he actually had graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, and he wanted to do fire protection. So I said if he came over, I'd get him trained up, and so he came over. And I also hired another individual that was industrial hygienist, or 2 other individuals, a Clinton Stewart, and the first occupational safety and health person I hired is Steve. His name is Steve Norling, and he would be a good person to interview in the future. I would recommend that you do that.
How do you spell the last name?
Norling, Norling.
Okay.
Steve, yeah, he's a good guy. He still works. I think he works for PRC. I haven't seen him in a few years, but I think he's still out there.
Okay.
But anyway, we developed a program. We put the program together, hired a contractor to actually help us with the writing of the program, and we set it up, and we actually went out in the site, and first of all we had to compile all of the buildings, because we were basically responsible for all of the Westinghouse people and all of their facilities. So we had to figure out all of the facilities in the whole site, and then we had to have some kind of system to figure which ones we would go look at first based upon risk. Okay, and so we developed that program, and to make a long story short, the Tiger team came back out to check the corrective actions on all of the site, and when they got to us, our program, they had no findings, absolutely no findings, 0 findings. And they only had one recommendation, and that we needed to involve the employees more. And so then we transitioned into the voluntary protection program. Okay, but that was very outstanding, and that really impressed my management. So then, from acting manager, I was made manager of the organization. Proceeded on to continue my career.
So what time frame was this roughly then?
Okay. Let's see. That was May 1991
Okay.
to September 1992.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. From there, I transitioned into basically manager of safety programs assessments, which developed, and basically our mission at that point was to develop baseline hazard assessment programs for facilities, and basically for each facility that you had operations in to go and do a baseline hazard of everything, both the occupational safety, industrial hygiene, the nuclear aspects of it, and any other types of hazards, so that for that facility, all of the known hazards of that facility would be known and could be communicated, you know, and basically programs and systems set up in place to keep the workers safe. From September 1992 to February 1994, I worked in that position. And after that, I worked as the manager of Voluntary Protection Program, or actually manager of industrial safety planning, which consisted of managing the Voluntary Protection Program for Westinghouse and for Flora Hanford during their contract transition. And of course, the Voluntary Protection Program is still out here on site, as you probably well know, and various different. But I was very instrumental in getting that program off, you know, off zero. After that, I worked as an operations engineer. I transitioned and went back out to the site to 105K East and K West. Worked as a operations specialist and development of the canister storage facility and the coal vacuum drying facility out at K Basins and at 200 East is where a canister storage building is. And then also K East and K West storage facility. I was assigned to the shift office and worked as an OE, operating engineer, basically under the direction of a shift manager, and basically managed the facility's work activities, coordinated those on a daily basis to get work done, assigning work to the craft personnel, releasing work packages, doing lockout, tagout, and various different aspects of operations for that facility, managing that facility. After that, let's see, that was from 1998 to 2002. And from January 2002 to present, I've worked as a management assessment coordinator. And responsibilities are primarily to develop the management assessment program and integrated evaluation plan database for DOERL.
Okay, for you.
Yeah. And let me explain, that integrated evaluation plan is basically a database that takes RL's assessments and our assessments and basically put them together. So we have one integrated plan.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that effort is to actually benefit or to alleviate or eliminate, you know, redundancy in assessments, you know, teaming with the site and doing various different assessments rather than they doing one and we doing the same one, but, you know, yeah. So that's currently where I'm at right now.
So you had several different sort of positions, and you worked in reactor, K Basins, doing different parts of the site. And of the different jobs you had over the 35 years, different places you've worked, what was there a specific job or place that was sort of the most challenging or most rewarding, thing that you got the most sort of sense of accomplishment or reward?
Yeah, it was. There was, and I would have to say probably the reactor operations was probably, I'd say, number one, and because I knew there was no other African Americans that had ever certified at InReactor, and then later on I found that there wasn't any others in any of the other facilities, other plants. So I felt very good about that. Okay. And it was very challenging. The second area would have been in developing the OSHA compliance program. because that was basically, I knew basically nothing. And I had to go find people in order to work that were much smarter than me and to be able to develop a program that would actually, meet the muster of headquarters when they came back out. And it was very challenging. I stayed up quite a few nights, thinking about it and worrying about it, and it was very challenging.
Yeah.
But it was a very, very well put together program, and it met everything that they were looking for. So I'd have to say those two positions were the most challenging. Yes.
When you were talking about working at the N reactor, you talked about riding the bus in the sort of spirit of the sort of sense of mission. I think in the Cold
Yes.
War.
Yeah.
So when the Cold War ended in 1990, did that sort of sense of mission change? Did it shift somewhat?
I guess I couldn't really expound on that, because what I was speaking of was during the time I was working at N Reactor, and once the Cold War ended, I was at that time working. When did the Cold War end? That was
well, I guess it depends. If you want, the Berlin Wall.
when
came
the
down
wall
in
came down.
89.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. Where was I at that time? I was. I was actually up in 200 area. I was oversight, or I was doing. I was a part of an appraisal team, doing integrated safety appraisals out of the 200 area. So I had transitioned away from N Reactor some years before that. So I didn't really feel a difference with what I was doing. The real thing that I seen that really affected a lot of the people at N Reactor was when they announced that it was not going to, it no longer had a mission. It wasn't going to be restarted. The reactor was run very hard, run very well, and produced a lot of power, and was very good in its mission. And there was just a lot of pride there. And so that was, when that was announced, there was there were a lot of people that really was hurt by that, because it was a reason to come to work. There was really a reason to come and a reason to work for something. So
I want to go back to something you talked about early when we first started talking, and you mentioned President Kennedy's visit when dedicated the N Reactor. So do you remember that? Did you?
I actually remember that very well. And in fact, it was my father and my mother and my sister and me and my friend Ronnie Brown. Okay, haven't seen him in years, but I understand he's doing well. We all, my dad brought us all out to the site and drove with all of the what seeming like thousands and thousands of cars. We were just kids, and all the way out to N Reactor. And yes, I definitely remember that. I can remember the helicopters coming in and the dust flying and all that. And then I didn't know that President Kennedy's hair was red. But that, on that day, seeing him that close, because me and my friend, we kind of wormed all our way up as close as we were just little tiny kids. So, people let us by, and we got up there, and we were able to stand up on, there was like different seating that people had brought. And we just kind of stepped up on, one of the little seats that were there, and we had to get our heads up over the crowds, and we could see him when he stepped out of the helicopter and he walked over to the podium. Yeah, I can remember that. Yeah, just like yesterday. I also remember that day very well because my sister, it must have been over 100 degrees there. My sister was suffering from heat exhaustion, or and I remember when we actually came back, my mother was taking care of her. She had was getting water into her and everything. Yeah, that was a very vivid day. That was a very, very, very good day. Yeah.
And then I also wanted to ask you was like growing up in Pasco in
Mhm.
the 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a segregated place? Or is it, what was it?
Not when I came along. Not actually in the 60s. I hear stories about the way it was, but I don't know. I went to Pasco High School. I went to Stevens Junior High School. That was all integrated. My grade school was Whittier. It was integrated. It just was East Pasco, and it was primarily blacks, but also there was Hispanics and whites. All went to that school, but it was predominantly black. Then after, actually, when I finished 6th grade, they divided 6th grade, and then 7th, 8th, and 9th was junior high school. I was selected because of where I lived in East Pasco. I was assigned to go to Stevens Junior High School, which was at that time way across town, and nothing or hardly anything around it. So we rode the bus over to Stevens, but prior to that, the majority of blacks, African Americans, Hispanics basically went to McLaughlin. It was McLaughlin Junior High School. But McLaughlin at that time was what is now Pasco City Hall.
Oh, okay.
That used to be McLaughlin. Okay. But even my brother goes back. I mean, my brother's deceased, and he passed away, in fact, about 1 year and 3 months ago.
This is your brother who was about 20 years older?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. He actually the high school at that time was McLaughlin, which then became City of Pasco. Okay. And Whittier was the grade school, junior high school. Okay, when he went to school. I do have some pictures of him. He was on the part of the patrol, that went out and let the kids across the street and stuff. Yeah, he had a little patrol hat on and all that. Yeah, I have all those pictures of him when he was really young. And by the way, my brother, he is 20 years older than me, but he graduated from Pasco High. He then entered the Army, okay, he was drafted. He was drafted, and he actually fought in the Korean War. And he corrected me every time I said Korean War. He said, no, it's a Korean conflict. It was not a war. Okay. And he served 2 terms in Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and was wounded.
What was
And
his first name?
Thurman. In fact, I have here's here.
Oh,
Obituary out of the paper. But he had what I consider pretty impressive military career.
yeah, 20 years of active service.
Yes. 2 terms in Vietnam,
Right.
a very unpopular war.
Mm-hmm.
Me growing up in the 60s, it was, I got a brother that's overseas fighting, with all the racial strife and stuff
Right.
here in the United States, but he was very proud of his country, and he was willing to go and do whatever he was assigned to do. And
And so
Anyway.
you had older brother, and how many other siblings did you have?
had a sister. I actually had a half brother and a half sister. That they didn't live here. They lived. Margie lived in Wichita, Kansas, and my other brother half brother lived I think he lived in Wichita, Kansas too. I didn't really get to know him that well. I got to know Margie pretty well. Then I had my sister, Marilyn. She graduated from Pasco High School, a teacher for 34 years in Yakima. She just retired about 3 years ago, I think. And still living in Yakima, but yeah, she taught school. And those were all of my siblings. Yeah.
So, would you say that Pasco, Tri-Cities was a good community to grow up? And
Yeah, I think so. I really think so. No, I don't have any. I have to just not so much the community as much as pointing back to my parents. I think I had I seen other people with different, my friends with different parents and stuff, and I think I had some pretty good parents. My dad was very industrial. He worked construction as a laborer, but he had rentals, and he had, and of course I came along, much later, but he had houses and rentals, but he worked construction, and him and his best friend, Mr. Luzelle Johnson, he was a bricklayer. My dad was a laborer. They kind of was a team, and they worked and they built a lot of houses in throughout Pasco, Kennewick, and Richland, back in, I guess, the 50s and 60s. Yeah, and he worked on a lot of the dams on the Snake River.
Oh, really?
The building of a lot of the dams, and I can just remember. I can remember my mother talking, and also my dad. And on Sundays we would take like drives, and he would take us way out to where the dams when they were being built and stuff, like just to for something to do on Sundays for the family, and I didn't pay any attention to it, really, but I can remember. Those were very good times. My mother, she worked at the Navy base that was in Pasco. Have you heard that?
Yes.
There was a Navy base there. She worked in the laundry at the Navy base, and then we came along, my sister and then me, and so she stayed home and took care of us, and my dad worked. But I spent a lot of years painting and fixing hot water tanks and unplugging sinks. And when I was a kid, I was very cheap labor, and so I learned to do that stuff really early in life, So yeah, that's pretty much my parents. They were very good. They were very good people. Anybody you ask, they were very good people. There's an obituary of my mom. I didn't get the obituary of my dad. I didn't find it. I have it somewhere, but there's this picture here. Anyway, go ahead. I'm kind of rambling, so you can. That's a good thing you're editing this, and you can cut out all of it.
Are there any sort of events? You talked about the JFK's visit, but any other events that sort of stand out in your mind from growing up or from your years working at Hanford?
I can't really.
Is there anything that really?
Not really. Not really anything that. Not really anything that really stands out.
So
Yeah.
Overall, then, looking back at your 35 years of working at Hanford, how do you assess it as sort of a place to work?
Overall, I'd say Hanford, for me, it's been a very good place to work. I was given opportunity. I had opportunity, and anyone that's going to achieve anything in life, if they prepare themselves, you know, and when the opportunity comes, they step forward and they take it. I mean, you can't much ask for much more than that. You know, my dad gave me some advice when I first, of course, when I first started working out there. He said, make sure you keep your eyes open and you watch everything around you, and do not worry about if there's people against you, because God will always put one person there for you. And I always remember he told me that, you know. And so I think about that at different times during the time I worked out there, of the people that have been there that have assisted me and mentored me and helped me to continue to do better work, better job, and basically to feed my family and keep on living, as my mother would say. Yeah. Yeah, but I can't think of any other outstanding. There's been a lot of accomplishments, you know, just, you know, small little milestones that have been made, you know, in safety and our management's commitment to safety, and our management's commitment to the workers and making sure that they are heard and that they're actually dealt with and talked to and gotten back to when they have safety concerns. And I guess that's a lot of pros and cons about that, but I see safety as being not just the number one thing at Hanford, but being integrated in all that we do at Hanford is how I see it. And so I know there's a lot of things I've seen the media, I've seen there are things that's going on out there that I don't know about. I have not worked in some of those areas, but for all of the areas that I have worked and been in, that has been the primary concern is safety. And so, and you compare to what we have out at Hanford, compare it to out in the real world, and you know, we have a lot of commitment and concern, and actually management standing up and taking responsibility, you know, for things, and actually dealing with them, trying to correct them, and working to try to make events or things that happen not reoccur. Yeah. So I actually brought which you can get back to your questions, but I'll forget. But I actually sent off, you know, I seen it on television, and then a fellow employee told me about the Cold War Patriots.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you probably know I got my little,
Oh, okay.
I got my little certificate, and I got actually the pin. Whoops. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually got this pin that came with it, and I have it. Of course, I can't bring my badge in here because it's Hanford badge, but I stuck my little pin on the badge, and so I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I talked to the
And
Cold War Patriots group last
Oh,
week
you did?
about the project here.
Uh huh.
Well, I don't have any other questions for you,
Oh,
unless there's something
okay.
else that we haven't talked about yet or didn't ask you about that you think is important to. We can, Eric could actually film some of this stuff, sort of,
Yeah,
once we're done talking, just kind of
Anything
get some
that
shots
you
of it.
showed him, we'd want to get like a photocopied.
Okay.
They could
Sure.
always integrate that then into the interview.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
But,
Sure.
anyway, thanks very much for
You bet.
coming in and doing the interview, and really appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, it's
Maybe
you know, if you don't step forward and make sure that you're a part of history, you won't be.
Absolutely. So how did you, I was going to ask you, how did you hear about the project? Did
Uh,
people contact you?
actually,
Or was
I
it-
was at a PZAC meeting, President Zero Accident
Oh, okay.
Committee, Council, and meeting, and there was an individual that works